Warning, this podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check your left over, we're going to pull evacuation at this time. They're pulling them out.
1011, advise ready for camp.
Gun!
To another episode of War Stories, I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
And we are here for this week's episode. How you been, man? I know you're still going through the process and everything. How's the? It's weird. How's the retirement coming? Right? It's like,
oh, yeah, it's coming along.
It's been a 3-year process.
Feet. Yeah, it's kind of coming to a head right now. I had a few doctor's appointments that I had to do for the city, and basically it's you have QMEs, AMEs, which are qualified medical examiners, agreed medical examiners, and then but you also have IMEs, which are independent medical examiners, which are like the third party people that are like not for the city, but they're for the city, but they're not, that type of thing. So I saw them, and all those went really well. I think they all saw me, and then they were all like, "Damn, like your shit's messed up. You really can't keep going." And then the last guy I had I came in, he was like, "I support this 100%. Your body is destroyed." And he goes, "Yeah, well, you want to get better, but you can't keep doing this job. It'd be different if you were like one of those dudes sitting behind a bank teller, like sitting behind a desk, some admin job." He's like, "Then we wouldn't be here, but that's not your job. You push a black and white, you're out there on patrol. That's your job. And there is no promoting out of it, right? Realistically, without going full duty." He's like, "You can't do that." So I'm like, "All right, well, yada, yada, whatever." And then, fucking crazy part is because the whole time you're going through this, they don't make this a very easy feeling for you to do. You almost feel like a shitbag or like an imposter kind of type, like you're lying almost, right?
Goldbricker. Yep. I had, so legit, I had a
cop. Feel like shit.
I introduced him to his wife.
Yeah.
I like, he's with her now. They're together. She was my doctor, right? So you must like and trust somebody to be like, "Hey, you're single, she's single. Why don't I introduce you to my doctor, who's a doctor, and she's cool, and you're cool, and I think you guys would hit it off, right?" And we've been at each other's houses multiple times. We've hung out. We've been off duty together, done all these things. And then when I was retiring, he's like, "You're faking it. You were never a great friend. You're doing this all for a pension." And I was like, "What? Shit.
That's not the."
Yeah.
It's so far from the truth, man.
I know.
And it's like it's those things that make you feel like you're doing something dirty or wrong, but you're really just trying to get better and healthy. And it's so frowned upon. And it's like, man, I kind of almost feel vindicated by the doctor being like, "Hey, man, you're fucked up. And you can't keep going." And after I heard that by like the 5th doctor, I was like, all right. And they weren't all associated with the city. They're all outside, private, things like that. Just, "Hey, you're messed up. What do you do? Oh shit, you need to stop." Like that type of shit. And then finally, I've had about a month of like nonstop back spasms, which has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you could use a little motivation.
Yeah.
And I think we have a good guest for that. He's laughing in the way because he knows what I'm saying. Who do we have? We have Scott this week. Chuck, tell us about.
We have Scott Medlin. Well, Scott Medlin is a national speaker to first responders and the military. He's a 5 times author. He's a police and Marine Corps veteran. He's also a podcast host, a YouTube creator of the 10 Code Mindset. Sounds pretty interesting.
And then he's a Marine Corps veteran, correct?
Yeah, and he's also an advocate for the mental fitness and resilience of our first responders and military personnel. Yes. I think that is so important. Military and mental toughness and mental readiness is I think the cornerstone of military and law enforcement. If we can't keep our minds right, how do we keep anything else right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, as you're going through your retirement, keeping your mind right is important. So let's welcome Scott to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you for having me on the show. Really honored to be here.
No, we're super happy to have you. We're always one of the things we hammer on this show a lot of points, right? But one of the biggest points we like to hammer is taking care of yourself, having something left at the end of your career, and when I say having something left, I don't mean the 3 divorces and the 5 alimony payments and all that.
No kidding.
I mean, like, have something left in your tank, have a place to go, have something you want to do. Don't be a statistic where, you die 5 years after you retire. And you're somewhat of an expert on that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what was your journey into law enforcement before we get into where you come from and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got into law enforcement because I was a sophomore in high school, had no idea what I wanted to do, and yet they brought us all to this career fair, and I thought, okay, sure, I'll go to this career fair. Bottom line is there was a recruiter from the police department there to speak to all of us teenagers, and I just went up and started speaking to him, and I was like, you know what? This is something I could do. And I got bit by the bug. I went on my first ride along at 17 years old, and I was like, yep, I'm going to do this one day. I mean, if, God willing. And anyway, but there was something first. There was, I enlisted in the Marines and went to Paris Island right after graduating high school. And
Okay, I
spent
feel
6
Paris
years.
Island.
Yep.
Yeah, there
Paris
you go.
Island. I was June, July, and August of 2001 at Paris Island. Wonderful time of year to be down there.
Sounds like it.
Amazing.
sounds like a garden spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God. The sand fleas are
Garden State.
crazy.
I had no idea that bugs could bite through sleeves. I remember.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I hear the bugs down there are prehistoric.
Oh, it was. I remember one time I know you asked about how I got into law enforcement and that kind of thing, but I'll bring up this story right quick.
Hey, we were all about veterans and law enforcement. And tell us as many stories you'd like. Go for it.
There was one day, I forget what our platoon did. I mean, we screwed up like all 3 months, so it was nothing to get punished. But anyway, so we did something, and we were in our skivvies, the shorts and t-shirt, and we did something. We had to run outside, get into formation, and the drill instructors noticed that the bugs were out because it was in the evening and the sun was going down, and they marched us closer to the tree line and the wood line, and they said, just stand here. And the bugs just feasted on us like it was Thanksgiving Day. It was awful.
Your punishment was to let the bugs eat you alive?
Yeah. And they kept saying, we better not see anybody SWAT. We better not see anybody SWAT, like swatting the bugs away. And it was awful. I hated it. I hate that.
Yeah, I think I would.
Dude, I forgot about shit like that they used to do to us. Just the dumbest things.
Yeah.
Sit here and let them eat you. Because they did that shit to us all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the time I remember one time we didn't get dressed in time, and they said, okay, and some of you seem to appear confused as to how to get dressed. So I want all of you to put your shoes on your hands and your shirts on your legs. And it was just, and we just stood there, just stood there with our shoes in our hands like this. It was just dumb stuff. I didn't mind getting quarter decks and all that kind of, I mean, that was part of it. I get it. It was painful, but I knew I was getting strong. But when you stand there just looking like a total fool, it's just, oh my gosh, that's the part that got me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I understand the mentality of, if you're not going to be smart, you're going to be strong. Right. I get that, right. Punish people by making them physically fit. But there is an element. Okay. Speaking of the cop that told me I was faking it, real quick. His trainee screwed up. He told this trainee, he found out the trainee had a motorcycle, and he said, let me see your CDL. Trainee had just bought a motorcycle because he's a new cop. He had money. He's like, bought a rice burner. He says, let me see your CDL, your driver's license. And he looks at it, and there's no motorcycle endorsement. And he goes, so you bought a motorcycle, but you have no motorcycle endorsement. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to ride it until I have a motorcycle endorsement. It's fine. Right. And the FTO's like, well, he rode it and crashed it, and it was a minor fender bender. It's solo, vehicle. It was just the motorcycle hit the curb, and he fell over and scratched it, and then put it back in his garage. But the police department of the city where the trainee lived happened to be the same police department that his FTO used to work at. So somebody from the police department called and says, "Hey, doesn't this guy work for you? Because he messed up and put his bike over the curb." So he's like, "Oh yeah." So he rode his bike. So he makes the next day during his training, he makes him put on an orange safety vest, a pair of clear eye protection goggles for wood shop, a pair of rubber gloves, and some knee pads and some elbow pads, and a crash helmet, a bicycle cop helmet, and makes him go out on patrol for an hour dressed like that.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. That was his
cool.
punishment. Yeah. Anyway, so was the Marine Corps a stepping stone to the police department for you, or did you want to be a Marine?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a stepping stone. It was just that I was doing yard work one day for a retired Marine colonel.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he gave me the question I knew was coming. "Son, have you ever thought about what you want to do in your future?" And I thought, well, I'm interested in law enforcement, but maybe the military first. I was thinking the Army. He goes, no. And basically, I was really impressed with how this guy was.
Mm-hmm.
And then my
That's
11th grade history, U.S. history teacher was a retired Navy corpsman, Vietnam veteran. So he pretty much was a surrogate Marine, and I was really impressed with him. I just met a lot of former Marines, including that corpsman, who I just really looked up to. I was like, this is something I could do that would help me later in life, but also I believed in service to country. So enlisted, and my first day as a Marine after boot camp was September 11th, 2001.
No shit.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Got off the bus at Camp Lejeune after boot camp leave for combat training. Let's see. I think just one plane had hit at that point. And the Lance Corporal greeting us slick sleeves and PFCs off the bus said, "Hey, a plane just hit the World Trade Center." And we were like anyone else for the most part, thinking, well, it was probably a big accident,
Right.
We're all in this train bus station. And we're just watching the news. And then we get transported somewhere else, and then we hear the second plane is hit. And at that point, all of us are looking at ourselves, and we're looking at each other like, we're going to go to combat at some point. This is getting real. And needless to say, combat training took on a whole new meaning that day.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's the moment in Braveheart. Well, it looks like we didn't get dressed up for nothing.
Yeah, right.
Like, some shit's about to go down, and you're going to be in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you enlisted it not because of 9/11. You enlisted because you needed something to do to prepare you for law enforcement, and you weren't old enough to go into law enforcement, and a Marine talked you into it. And
but basically, I believed in service to country anyway. And I was just going to do reserves, go to college, and then work my way through officer candidate school and go active as an officer and do time that way.
Mm-hmm.
But
smart.
after 2 deployments to Iraq, getting pulled out of college twice to go do those 2 deployments, and it was coming up on 2007 when I had the option of getting out, and I said I might stay in, and my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, she was like, I don't know if I could do this deployment thing, because they were already talking about us possibly going back a 3rd time. And I said, yeah, I'll get out and graduate college and pursue law enforcement. So that's what I did.
So how old were you at that point?
Let's see. When I got out of the Marines, I was 24.
That's a good age to get into law enforcement.
Yeah,
yeah,
I would say so. You're not so like wet behind the ears where you're so. And when I say that, it's more of like an immaturity thing where you're so immature that you get into trouble off duty and things like that. Alcohol related.
You crashed your motorcycle,
right? Yeah. So it's you were a little bit more mature. 20. I mean, it's not crazy, but it's a later stage to get in law enforcement than I see a lot of the younger cats do. And I think it's better going in a little bit delayed because you have that sense of maturity going in a little bit more than the other people, and allows you to process things better. And I believe it allows you to move better within inside of the department, whatever department you choose, because you are less likely to be involved or a risk management issue off duty. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. And I know for a fact the structure of the Marine Corps, the teamwork aspect, the rank and file, the chain of command, all that kind of mentality is in addition to some tactics that you can apply from military into policing, not all tactics and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it definitely helped.
Right.
Yeah,
Now,
for sure.
do you feel like you made the right decision to go when you did, or do you wish you had gone sooner, or do you feel like you could have stayed longer if it wasn't for the deployment situation, right? Because let's face it, like there is a point where I'm sure you were like, you know, I'm good. Let's do the deployment home. But police work is we talk about this on the show, is like a 12-hour deployment, right? You just get to go home at night, right? So do you feel like you could have stayed longer, or do you feel like you went out at the right time?
No, I went out at the right time and got into law enforcement at the right time.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So now go ahead.
I was gonna say, what was that transition like from the military going straight into academia and law enforcement? What was that transition like?
Well, I mean, I know I was activated twice for Operation Iraqi Freedom, but let's see.
Oh shit.
We got home in fall of 05.
So those deployments still happened.
Oh yeah, they definitely happened. But I got
what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
What the fuck? All right.
Yeah, no, those I guess we skipped over those two chapters, but anyway,
You'll have to come back and talk to us about your deployment stories then.
Yeah, oh yeah, I got some. But let's see. I had been on reserve duty for maybe a year and a half or 2 years prior to getting out, and it's amazing. It's just I have to think about it because it's been that long and long ago that it happened. So basically, it's not like I went from active duty right into law enforcement. Like I'd been in the civilian population again, but definitely had the experience of the Marines and those deployments going into law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you from the time you gated out, so to speak, of the Marine Corps to get your first job in law enforcement? And did you stay with the same agency the whole time?
I was very fortunate where I graduated college in May of 07. I got out of the Marines in June of 07, and I got hired on by my hometown police department in July of 07. So it was
that was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was very quick. I was very blessed. And no, I did not stay there the whole time. I made a very bad mistake. A little after my first year, I got in a group with a negative. I got into a like I was influenced as a newer officer by negative officers, and I let them. I made the decision, but they didn't exactly talk me out of it. And I thought, based on their consistent griping and negative outlook on everything the department was doing, that I was at a department that was a sinking ship. And it really hurt me because I really wanted to work in my hometown department for many years.
Sure.
Right.
So I quit and I went to a smaller department. And I'm not knocking the one I went to, but about 3 months into it, I realized rather than pursuing another opportunity, I was trying to run from a negative emotion.
Right.
And it was a really bad mistake. So I begged and begged and begged the hometown department to take me back. And maybe 6 to 8 months later, they did take me back. Thank goodness. But that was after chewing me out on an oral board for 90 minutes. And I still think I hold the record for the longest oral board at that police department. But
for to return.
And then I returned and I worked there for several years afterwards.
My old man worked. People know who my old man worked for. He worked for LAPD, and the personnel department at LAPD would actually frame and hang up letters from cops who had lateraled to other departments and were asking for their job back. Because at that agency at the time, as long as it was within 12 months, if you asked for your job back, they'd just reinstate you.
Okay, right, interesting.
But you had to send a letter asking for reinstatement. And so they'd take your reinstatement letter and they hang it on the wall in a frame so that everybody who came in to leave to go to another agency would realize it's not better somewhere else.
It really isn't.
No, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. In fact, it may look greener, but it's skewed by the way that you're feeling currently. And if you can fix the way that you're currently feeling and try to assess what is actually going on at the ground level, you can actually prevent a lot of that BS from taking place, and actually just reevaluate where you're currently at, because it's going to be the same shit no matter where you go.
Right.
It's going to have its pros, it's going to have its cons. You may go from a big agency to a smaller agency, so staffing might be different, days off might be different, but the same bullshit's still going to be there at its core. It's law enforcement. It's,
Yep.
it's
Now, I'll say this though, personality goes into it, because
that's true.
my personality, and I had a supervisor tell me this one time. He goes, "You should be at a bigger agency." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, that's your mentality, that's your skill set, that's your mindset. Like, this, you should be at a bigger agency. And then there are other guys that work at big agencies, like, you'd do much better at a smaller agency. And it's not a knock on anybody's skill set, right? Because they're both cops. It's more of the environment, the culture, right? Of what you're dealing with, as opposed to, because one thing's that you work at a smaller agency, you get a lot of benefits, right?
Mhm.
But there are some opportunities you'll miss. But at the same time,
Yeah, and
working
vice
in a bigger
versa.
agency, the opportunities might be there, but there's a lot of learning and a lot of generalization and a lot of police work that you won't get to do for a long. You'll get to do a lot of the big stuff over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But you won't get to work a rape case, right? You're not going to get to work, write a search warrant. You're not going to do that stuff unless you get into those specialized spots. Whereas you go to smaller agencies, everybody's doing it, right? You have to do it. It's you catch it, you clean it. So
Right. And there's a lot more
that's a
nepotism
personality
too.
thing, I think.
There's a lot more nepotism in bigger agencies as well. You know what I mean? Like, people are like, oh, it's bigger, it's easier to move around. Well, let's think about that, because if we do statistics and we bring in statistics and we look at how many officers are trying to promote into that other agency or get into a unit, or let's just say gangs. They want to work a gang or narcotics deal or a vice deal, because a lot of smaller agencies, vice, it's all encompassing gang, narcotic, and sex and everything, like all that stuff. It's all right there. So say you're trying to get into a vice unit at that smaller agency, and there's 30 people or 100. Let's say there's 100 people. So it's not a crazy small agency, but it's not big by any means. It's 100 officers sworn. So you're probably going to have 5 officers trying to get for that one fucking spot, right? Whereas in an agency with like 9,000 plus fucking officers, and then we can also, that's LAPD, and then you got like, Chicago, which is what, like 20 or 40 or something, and then you have 20 or
40,000,
and then you have, okay, so that changed a little bit, and then you
But
have
more
NYPD
spots,
that used to be
more
40, but it's
competition.
probably a little bit more. Right. So now you have more competition. Now you have, instead of those 5 officers, you have 100 or 200 or 400 for the same fucking spot. So it's like, okay, yeah, you may have more opportunities because that spot might pop up in another 6 months at another division, right? But it's going to be the same amount of officers applying for that same spot again. Whereas opposed, you have the 5 at a smaller agency, whereas you can do your time, and most spots time out after 3 to 4 years, or maybe 5, depending if you extend. And then that spot opens up for another guy behind you to give them the fair opportunity to go in and learn that skill set. And then in 4 years, he pumps out and goes to do something else. I think it develops a more well-rounded cop.
So your
That's
agency
coming from a
took you
big
back.
agency.
Your agency took you back, and it was after a big ass chewing.
Oh yeah, and I fully
That's awesome,
deserved
dude.
it.
I got told by the chief of police. He said, "You leave. Don't try to come back. If it sucks, you're screwed." Right? That was the message this old school chief said to me. But they took you back. You're now back on the job, and you spend how many more years there?
A little over. Let's see. I came back December of 09 and eventually left in August of 2020.
Oh, there you go. So 11-ish years. Right. And in that time, did you feel like you had made the right decision to go back?
Every single day. Like I never let the negative officers get a hold of me again. Am I saying I never complained or never got caught up in the gossip wheel? Oh, heck no. But I never had that mentality before where I let the opinions of others become the way I looked at things and take their opinions as reality. I never let that happen to me again. And I was grateful to be back every single day, even if there were stressful times or toxicity within the 4 walls or negativity, whatever. I was grateful to be there.
And if you think that going to another agency is going to eliminate that toxicity, you got another thing coming, because the longer we've done this show, the more we realize that the job is the job is the job is the job is the job, no matter where you go. The problems just change faces, but it's the same problems, you know?
Yep.
If you allow people to control your outlook on life, that you're always going to have that issue. You have to take control of the narrative.
100%.
Man.
Working on your agency, you know, and before we get to your kind of new career out, you know, after law enforcement. So what were some of the kinds of things that were, I don't want to say routine, but what were some of the incidents? Because every department, you know, almost has its own personality. Every city has its own personality. You know, I never thought I would have to deal with a loose horse in the roadway, but I dealt with them once a month, you know, in my career, because we had an area of town. What's that?
Said yeehaw.
Yeah, we had an area of town where people could think Foothill Division, Chuck. We had an area of town where people had horses. And so I had to deal with them getting out. And I was a city boy. I didn't know the first freaking thing about dealing with loose horses. So what did you have a rural area? Did you have a suburban area? What was yours? What was your area like?
Yeah, well, Tom, I'm definitely glad I didn't have to deal with a horse. But anyway, no, it was, I was assigned a district that was the northern area of the city. It was actually a lot of it was the area where I grew up. And so it was nothing for me to drive on patrol past my elementary school, past my old middle school building, and past my high school. And it was honestly, in my opinion, the best district in the whole city to work. You had commercial areas, you had neighborhoods that, I mean, unfortunately had high crime, but I mean, if you brought the warrant list down there and wanted to go find people, you could get into some stuff. And then there was a U.S. highway going through it. There were local streets. And there was a Walmart. So we had a good mix of everything.
So you had the best of both worlds.
Crime if you've got a Walmart.
Yeah. For sure.
You know, the whole city had 3 Walmarts, if I'm remembering correctly. And I don't think I worked a single shift. There were probably a few shifts, but it seemed like most shifts, there was at least one call to the Walmart.
Right.
Either Walmart throughout the city.
Wow. How's it working where you grow up? Because I did not work where I grew up, and I also wouldn't live where I worked. So
yeah. I did not live where I worked, and I'm very glad I decided to live somewhere else than where I worked. However, working as a cop where you grew up, that had its benefits, and that also had its moments where it was like, gosh, dang it. Like, I remember one time, this is when I first started, call went out, potential kidnapping, and we did an on-risk stop on the vehicle, and out come classmates of mine from this vehicle. And we've got them at gunpoint, and they're saying my name. I mean, one of them's hammered and he's calling me by the wrong name, but he knows who I am. And it's just like, oh, this stinks. Or there'd be some times where I would pull over people, or other officers would pull over people, and tickets were issued. And yet these people knew who my parents were, and they would go to my parents and say, hey, your son wrote me a ticket. And it's just that kind of thing I did not like at all. However, when it comes to knowing the area, I knew people. I could resonate with people that I did run into from school. I could say, hey, we were classmates. And that would particularly, like this. I remember one time I showed up into a neighborhood where it was an argument, property damage had been done, but I knew one of the ladies there that was really, really angry. And the fact that we went to school together, I was able just to use that as a common bond that we had to help bring her down a little bit and de-escalate the situation as best I could. So stuff like that, it was, like I said, it had its benefits and it also had its disadvantages.
Did you ever have to worry about people that you may have upset in your life before law enforcement that came back to bite you? Because working in a small town, I mean, like, you work in the town you grew up in, you live the town you work in, you're bound to be involved in something on duty that has maybe stemmed from outside, or or in the past. Did you have any of that stuff that came back?
No, I wasn't really involved in anything, or didn't really, there wasn't anything anybody could hold over my head or anything like that. I mean, just legal wise or anything like that. I was, my mom really kept a good watch on me growing up. Like, I just, even if I was at another place, I felt like she was still there. So anyway, I don't think anyone was holding anything over me. And then it's I didn't get involved in the wrong crowd growing up, so nothing like that. That was honestly, it never had to be concerned about that. But that's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that.
Oh, nice. Well, that's good. I've worked in areas where like I don't work in the area where where I live, and there's been numerous incidents where I like to try to stay super far away from the area that I work, and I have come in contact with people I've arrested off duty. One of the guys that we arrested for a robbery at gunpoint ended up his address of location was across the street from my daughter's school,
Oh gosh.
60 miles away. I was like, how ironic. Like, it's just
Oh
that
wow.
even when you try to move far away, it's still so close. So I just, I didn't know if living and working in the town that you grew up in, if that might have some of those similar type of things. But that's good it didn't. It's amazing.
Yeah, and there was only one time I remember that really bothered me where there was a guy I'd arrested, and I'm talking less than 2 weeks later, we went bowling with some friends in the neighboring city, and he was there, and he was at the lane directly beside us, and it was just like,
You're
oh
like,
my God,
oh,
are you kidding me? And yeah, and my wife would, if she was here, she'd tell you just how I was done for the night. Like that ruined me. I mean, it didn't it didn't ruin me, but I couldn't stop watching him, and I was really upset
right.
he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hypervigilance type of thing. Like, oh,
Oh,
fuck,
big time.
hopefully he doesn't recognize me.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, for sure.
So what kinds of things, give us one of your favorite things you did or dealt with on the street. What actually was a good time? You're like, all right, this is one of my favorite things that I got to do.
Heck yeah, I really enjoyed serving warrants, and
Yes.
I really enjoyed serving warrants when I worked as a canine officer. And
Oh, okay.
I was very blessed as well to be on just throughout my 7-ish years on this one patrol team. We we were a really tight knit group, and we got along great. And some people would come, some people would go, but that even if we got new people on the team and some would leave, like we still meshed really well. And I was very blessed about that, because if you're on the team where you're not getting along with everyone and there's gossip and stuff, like it can really wreck the day in a way. But anyway, doing the warrants, doing the canine thing, that was great. And I will never forget one day I was heading home from I'd had a busy night. I mean, the night started off when a friend of mine and I were just kind of taking a break from everything, pulled up cars side by side, and we're talking. And all of a sudden, I noticed this one car backing out of a house, but they're backing out, and it's not a busy street. They're backing out at like 2 miles per hour, and then they back out, and then they stop in the road.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, and I'm just watching them in the road. They're parked in the road with the reverse lights on. And eventually they go forward at about 10 miles per hour. And I said to my friend, I said, might have an impaired driver over here. So went down the road, and sure enough, they were driving just all sorts of signs of driving impaired. And they made a right. I flip on the blue lights. All of a sudden, all 4 doors come open, and there's young men running everywhere. And I run after them, and it's nighttime, so I pop the door after giving the canine warning, and I go after the slowest guy. Unfortunately, my dog went after the slowest guy too. So out of 4 people, I only caught one of them. But that was like that was just the first incident of a very busy night. The morning rolls around. I'm finally at the south end of the city, clocking out because I lived in a neighboring city. I'm like, finally, I get to go home. But then I hear that the federally task force violent criminal apprehension team is in our city wanting to get a bank robbery suspect. And I'm like, okay, well, they're here. I hear it over the radio. But then all of a sudden they call for a canine. Well, that shift didn't have a canine officer working. So I said, do you want me up there? And the supervisor said, yes, and get up here quick. So I drove 4 exits up the interstate as fast as I could. That woke me up, needless to say. And I get to the apartment complex, and this apartment building is surrounded by these undercover officers decked out in all their tactical gear they could all the issue tactical stuff you could ever wear. And I'll never forget that they said, bring your dog up to the building. So I did. And they have rifles pointed at this apartment. This bank robbery suspect is not getting away, but they said,
Oh,
can't. Yeah, they said he's in there, but he won't say anything. We can't, but we know he's in there because his girlfriend had also said he was in there. But anyway, long story short. Long story short.
No, this is about stories. You make it.
No.
Yeah, it's the rifles pointed. He knows he can't go anywhere, and he won't tell them anything. He won't comply. He's just in there somewhere. And obviously they don't want to search room to room. That can get dangerous.
Yeah.
I go right to the door. Well, just outside of view of the door to where if he did pop out, he couldn't see me. But they said, have your dog bark. So I had the dog bark a few times on command. It's still nothing. And they said, you know what? Give a warning. Can you send him in? I said, of course I can send him in. It's a hiding bank robbery suspect. So
yeah, absolutely.
I give the canine warning. I send the dog in, and he immediately goes to this trash bag because there's food in it. I said, no, stop.
I'm hungry, man.
Yeah. So he's like, I've been working all night.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyway, he listened to me. I was very impressed. He listened to me, and he starts searching the apartment. And there's a bedroom door that's cracked about 2 inches open. All of a sudden, that door shuts. And I notified my cover officer, who's got this AR pointed over me. I mean, he's not flagging me, but he's got it. I said, did you just see that? He went, yeah. I see him. I see it. He said, get your dog out. So I got the dog out. And as the dog's coming out, we hear the suspect yell, don't let that damn dog bite me.
That's awesome.
And the task force officer yells, well, if you come out with your hands up, we won't. And he complies at that point. He comes out. The arrest is made. My thing is, there were other times like that where it just proved that you have a dog, and it's just amazing how people react differently. And who knows how that situation would have gone down had the dog not been there. It was incredible.
Dude, we used to jingle keys or do the cane because in our cars we would have the canine announcement. We're like, hey, let's just fucking ruse them. We just say we just do the canine. We'll play the canine fucking call out. We'll take a set of keys and jingle them on the fucking PA and be like, we're gonna send the dog, and if you don't come out, and sure as shit, sometimes that shit would work, and they'd come out, but then half the times they're like, nope, go ahead, send them in. And you're like, fuck, now I actually got to get them.
Yeah,
but
that's the problem with bluffs, man. If they call your bluff, you're screwed. But the dogs are the most. I will tell people, horses and dogs, most effective tool.
Yeah,
dude, they're the most like kind of like the most like I guess archaic type of tool that we have. It's old. It's not this new school technology. It's the basic bullshit that works so well. Yeah, it'd be great if we had a drone that we could send in to find that guy. Hey, cool, let's send in the fucking drone. Drone is like this big, sends it in. Hey, we got the suspect. We know what room he's in. Hey, let's set up our stick and we can come up. That's great. But if you don't have that, the dog works just as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I tell people who are really opposed to like using the dog because it's aggressive, and I'm like, no, if the dog gets compliance out of a suspect, that's de-escalation in and of itself. Yeah. Like if the suspect was bound to be fighting officers or was going to do something violent to somebody, and just the presence of the dog brought that person down to comply, that's de-escalation. Like, that's a big word everyone wants us to do.
Yeah, and that's part of de-escalation. And what people don't understand is that officer involved shooting is actually a part of de-escalation. It's part of the categories of the ascending waterfall going down of what's part of de-escalation, and that's part of it, which people seem to forget. De-escalation is a whole system of things to try to gain compliance, and it doesn't mean yes sir, no sir, please sir.
Correct.
It's hey, we're gonna fucking do this. And if you don't do this, so go ahead and do that, and this will not happen. That's de-escalation. It's explaining the cause and outcome, the cause and effect of if you continue on this path, the effect will be this from this cause. Like it's a cause and effect, and it's something that we ingrain in kids at a young early age. But I think a lot of parents have been kind of forgetting about raising their kids, and they leave that portion out of when they're raising them, and then we have to come in as law enforcement and help rear these kids that are full grown adults, right?
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to a lot of that type of stuff is it's cause and effect, and you have to explain your cause for the effect, and it's part of de-escalation, even if it's a dog barking at you, willing to rip your fucking face off, because you're going to think twice about what your next action is, what your next step is, right? De-escalation.
Yeah, 100%.
Well,
100%.
I said if you fail to use sufficient force quickly enough, right? You show up, you realize you need to use force, you hesitate, you're afraid, you're this, you're that, the other thing. If you don't use enough force, you're going to make the situation worse, right? Sometimes just tackling somebody to the ground and getting them in cuffs right away may look harsh, but it's better than the fight you're going to get into by letting them have time to think.
And this is why I made sure I trained a lot of my years training on the mats was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
right?
And then I trained some Krav Maga. I don't like it whenever officers are too reliant on the stuff on their belt, the taser, the pepper spray. Like we've got to be more proficient in doing that, like being able to control someone real quick as a way of de-escalation, but also protecting other people and or ourselves. So yeah, I always encourage someone, if they're not training, then they won't know what to do. If you have to think about it, it's already too late. Make it instinctive, because it can help in this and being able to take control of the situation that much better. And I know you want to do that.
Yeah. What did General Mattis say? Have a plan to kill every person you meet.
I mean, he wasn't the first one to say it, but that was,
Yeah, that's what he's known for saying,
be
though.
Professional, have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
And that is a good outlook to have in law enforcement and in military, because you're not looking to kill every single person that you meet, but you have a plan to enact if that person turns violent. That's all it is having a plan to immediately react to and to take action towards if this person turns violent. And that's all that it means. And having that plan and being able to forward think while you're, in a fluid atmosphere, it allows you to not get so hinked up on the small little things and allows you to continue on through the exercise or the movement or the mission or whatever you're doing, because your body just works through it. You train your body to do it and it just does it. Right. Yeah. So like, I don't know. I think having that plan with every person that you meet, if it goes sideways, it's now at this point, it's muscle memory. You're reacting to their actions and you're training. And I think that training is important and you have to continue to do so all the time.
Oh, big time. 100%. And even if it's just simply like some of the best advice I got when I first started was mentally rehearse certain scenarios in your head as to how you would react. That will give the
100%.
brain that will give that brain the initial exposure to where if you rehearse it enough, you've been there when you encounter it. Like the first time someone ran from me on a traffic stop, he ran out the passenger side door. I had already rehearsed that in my mind several times. I did what I'd rehearsed in my mind instinctively, and while I'm doing it, I'm surprising myself that I was doing it. But I remember to lock the door with the key fob. I looked back at the car to make sure no one was still in the car, and maybe they try to shoot me in the back or start chasing after me while I'm chasing after this other person. And all because of mental rehearsal. Now, obviously, certain things you actually do the hands-on training where you experience that heightened sense of emotion, but something as simple as mental rehearsal during downtime, just keep training always.
Right.
Yes. Go ahead, Chuck.
I was just going to say, do you think that in law enforcement, we pride ourselves so much on tactics, and mentally rehearsing things, but we always forget the mental aspect of it. What happens after the fact that we've done X, Y, and Z? What happens then? What happens after an OIS? What happens after a critical incident that you just fought for your life? What do you, and I know so many agencies, it's like they want to preach resiliency and they want to preach all this other stuff, but a lot of the times it falls by the wayside because they have so many other things that they're doing, because it depends on the size of the agency and whatever. Do you think that there are things that can be better done in law enforcement to better protect the mental capacity of officers operating in this current atmosphere?
100%. And a lot of it comes down to leadership. Do the officers feel supported? And I'm not saying that if an officer does something wrong, there shouldn't be consequences. But many times when we have officers involved in critical incidents, do they feel, and they've acted within the law and within policy, do they feel like they're support, or do they feel like they are in such a bind that they themselves they are not safe, and they do not act quickly because they're worried they're going to just get the book thrown at them, even though they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, there is that fear. I've seen it where officers are more scared about not the suspect, but what's going to happen within the four walls after it. And we can't, that is draining on somebody. But also, I remember whenever we'd be involved in use of force incidents and we all hated that we had to use force. And then they would say, you good? You good? You good? Okay, everyone back to the report room. We got to get this use of force done. Like, there was no decompression time. And we're at the computer having to work on this report less than 30 minutes or an hour, depending on how long the arrest process went. But it's still, it's like a few hours. And we're there working on this use of force report. And I'm like, we didn't even take time to just take some deep breaths.
Yes.
It's like, what in the world?
You don't have time.
Yeah. Dude, I got into a shooting.
You're never going to get a chance to do that.
No, I got into a fucking shooting, and we go back to the station, and it's after some some of the questions have already been asked and things like that, and I'm clear to talk because I've already given my statement. It's well past 24 hours after my first start of watch, right? So I've been here for 24 fucking hours.
Jeez.
The lieutenant looks at me and goes, "All right, I'll see you back tonight." And I said, "What?"
Oh, wow.
No. I was dumbfounded. I was like, "No, fuck you. No, that's not happening. What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll see you back tonight. That's the way we used to do it. That's the way we're going to do it." And I was like, "That's not what's happening, bro." And I was like, "And you shouldn't make anybody who was involved in that OIS who got shot at to come to work tonight. You should give them the night off, maybe the next couple nights off, to allow them to decompress and to fully comprehend what just fucking happened. They were just shot at. Their lives were almost taken from them, and now you're making them witness someone getting shot and going back to work that same night. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that risk management is an issue? Big time. Do you think that their actions could be heightened or their responses could be heightened based on someone else's reaction? Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that they could make some dumb mistakes? Mm-hmm. And if they do, who's at fault?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's that type of stuff. And I was like, no fucking way. Like, I'm taking my time. I took my 2 weeks, and then those guys who all worked that night, every single one of them called out. They went to work. They got involved in the first hot shot call that came out, fucking toned out, beep, beep, beep. Hey, respond to this. They get there. They were so jacked up from the night or hours prior. They're like, we can't do this. We can't fucking do it. And they went to supervisors like, we can't fucking do it. And they had that wherewithal and that knowledge and that forward thinking to be able to, hey, nope, we're done. We're calling it. We can't patrol like this. And I think that coming from officers in the field is piss poor management. And I think that needs to be more accountability when it comes to officers' mental health, because we focus so much on the physical aspects of it. Like you were kind of just saying, we focus so much on the physical aspect that we forget about the mental awareness of officers and the mental toughness and the mental resiliency if we're not actively training it. Right. And if you're not actively helping them, they're bound to fail.
Oh yeah, 100%. And in the beginning with these rookie schools or academies, whatever, whoever's listening, whatever they're called, where you are, there has to be more emphasis on understanding how we as humans are, because as tough as you may think you are, the badge does not make you exempt from experiencing what humans experience, especially when going through something critical. The brain always by default wiring, the brain always focuses on the negative. The brain always wants to conserve energy, and your brain is not programmed to make you happy. And we as humans, innately, we seek to avoid pain, and we'll run from pain, but we'll seek pleasure.
Yep.
Therefore, we typically will do what is easier. So it's easier to complain. It's easier to gossip. It's easier to think over and over again about that traumatic or negative incident and or the negativity within the four walls. And then what is easy to do to cope with that kind of stuff? You have people doing impulsive behaviors. You have people doing drinking, gambling, sex, all these things that happen because it's easy, but it leads to lasting long-term pain over however much amount of time. And who knows how my career would have been different. I would have been told about this stuff. I mean, we're even talking about how officers need to understand how people are essentially a reflection of the habits they have. Do you have behavior that reflects good habits or behavior that reflects bad habits,
Right.
and how can it affect you, not only taking care of you, but showing up that much better for others, or being that
Right.
liability that shows up. So y'all have gotten me started. So I'm
Well,
passionate about this stuff.
Let's talk about
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
we got you started, because you've transitioned out of law enforcement into a whole different field now. You have scottmedlin.com is your website.
The
And
scottmedlin.com. Yeah.
I'm sorry, the scottmedlin.com. Not there's no other Scott Medlin but this one. He is the scottmedlin.com. Don't mess it up, listeners.
Don't be
Go
fucking around. It's the Scott Midland.
the
I'm
scottmedlin.com.
telling you.
Anyway, so the
scottmedlin.com was already taken.
Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, I should probably
The
write
Scott Medlin.
the scottmedlin.com. And now you've been featured on Law Enforcement Today. You have your own podcast. You have an ebook. So this became a focus for you, didn't it?
It did, because in January of 2020, after being on the job for 13 years, that's when I learned the first time that more cops were dying more by their own hands than being killed in the line of duty. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. All the struggles I went through, all the struggles I know other officers have been through with mental health. And I'm just now finding out about this 13 years into the profession. That did not sit well with me at all. Now, I know that times have changed. There has been a shift. So for any cop to now be surprised by that statistic is like they should know about that. But is there a shift in the culture enough where this is becoming second nature to take proactive measures to take care of yourself? Because what have been some of the common rules of thumb? Have a hobby outside the profession, have friends outside of the profession, don't listen to radio on your days off, and don't overwork yourself if you can help it by, particularly don't sign up for more off duty and all that kind of stuff. Like, enjoy your days off. But if these statistics, exactly. And but if these things if those tips that have been shared for years were working so well, why are we seeing the numbers we're seeing when it comes to mental health and the ever-present threat of suice?ide?
Can I take a stab at that one? Because I have a theory.
I was about to say, if you don't, I'm going to.
Yeah, right.
Those are words, right? You can't tell somebody, hey, have interests outside of law enforcement, and then never give them time to undertake interests outside of law enforcement because you overwork them due to staffing levels.
Yeah.
You can't tell people to have preparation for retirement and then have a culture that says this is all that you are and this is all that you're ever going to be. And we are good at saying this stuff. We are good at telling people, hey, make sure you take care of yourself. But any cop will tell you, and I went through this. I talked, when you ask for help, that it comes at a cost, and that cost could be your career. It could be your promotion. It could be it could be a black spot on your record that follows you for the rest of your career, and you're going to get talked about. We don't normalize the actual behaviors of treating cops like they're people. Even cops don't, right? We call each other potato chips. We tell each other to dig the sand out of our vaginas, right? Like, we do all that stuff. Now, to me, yes, it has to be a part of our culture. We have to have a tough culture. I get it. We have to toughen each other up. But when I look at my homies, when I look at the guys that show up on the locker room, when I look at Chuck, when I look at Matt, those who listen to the show, when I look at my boys, I give them so much shit. A lot. Tons. And then when I see them breaking, I give them a little more shit and I break them and we push them over the edge and we drive each other crazy until we see that our buddy actually needs help. And then we move heaven and earth to help them out. And I don't think that culture has seeped its way into law enforcement as much as it needed to a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
agree.
I agree with you.
After my shooting, I had a couple good buddies who were like, hey, we know you're struggling. Why don't we go and do this? I didn't know I needed it, but I was okay with it. We went out and we saw a movie and it was the dumbest shit. And we sat and talked for a couple hours and they let me know, like they said, thank you. You saved my life. That meant a lot to me. And I'm like, thank you. And they're like, and we just kind of like shot the shit. They told me that they were thankful for the actions that I took to save their lives. And I kind of got some insight onto that. And I was so fucking angry. I was so pissed that this dude tried to kill me, tried to kill my team. And I fucking had to take the shots, and I had to put this motherfucker down. And it pissed me off so much to where I was more angry than I was upset. I was pissed. And but I think that what the biggest thing with the department, I think though the guys on the ground, the troops on the ground, the boots on the ground, the patrol officers, they really have their partners back. But most agencies fall by the wayside by not checking in on their officers after a fucking critical incident, after something major, regardless if it's a shooting or whatever, maybe a big traffic accident or a child death. They don't check in on their officers. They're just like, they're going to be okay. That's, I think, the biggest.
I think it's worse than that. It's looking at somebody and going, "You're fine, right?"
Yeah, because they don't want the issue,
and that's what they don't want to deal with it either. Like it's what it's you're fine, right? Because if you're not fine, that means I might not be fine, right? Like let's all just be fine.
Oh, that's the
let's
biggest
covers over our head
phrase.
It goes away.
Biggest, one of the most damaging phrases in all law enforcement and other first responder work is that only those 3 words, "I am fine."
Yeah.
I mean, for the fact that I remember one time a friend of mine was dispatched to an infant who died and was found, and the major asked him when he walked out of the house, he asked him, my friend, he said, "Are you doing it?" He was like, "I'm fine." See, the problem is he couldn't even acknowledge and just say, "That was sad to see." Like it just acknowledge you're human kind of thing. We're not fine. It's like, are we ever fine? No. Just acknowledge you're human and just express how you're feling. It's okay.
Right. So I can assume when your wife does it.
Yeah. So I assume you're seriously passionate about mental health and officers' well-being, right?
Oh, 100%.
And so am I. I think it's a big passion of mine. I'm a peer support counselor, and I take that to fucking heart. Good. Like, I will never stop fucking putting that on my resume. I'll never stop preaching about it because I think it's so important. And I think that a lot of agencies need to adopt this and adopt a peer support type of thing, because these are the people that are going to be falling back on. Officers are going to be falling back on in their time of need. They're not going to be going to the supervisor, not going to be going to the fucking commanders and things like that. They're going to be going to the boots on the ground, their fucking buddies, who, if they have these trainings and tactics and techniques to use, they can help their fellow officers through times of need and struggle. And I've specifically helped people through that, and I've been helped through it in the same effect. And I think it's super important to have like a peer support, because it allows officers to feel like they have a voice and they can talk to someone without being judged, right?
100%.
And right. For being involved in incidences like any critical incident, you have your brothers and your sisters to fall back onto, and then to tell you, hey, like, if you need things like this, I can help you with this, I can do this. And they don't feel so drained on their department, and they don't feel like they're bogging them down, but they can get the resources that they need just by talking to these people. And I think that more departments need to empower peer support to actually have control over certain aspects of law enforcement and patrolling and staffing and things like that. The way I had control, where I could be like, hey, this officer's struggling. He needs to work the kit room tonight.
Mm-hmm.
He can't go out in the field. Why? It's confidential. He's going to work the kit room tonight, and that's the end of the story. And they go, okay. And I'll go, if it goes past 3 days, we're going to have a conference and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to, that way, that employee, that officer knows he's being taken care of, and he feels like he can lean on someone, and he's less likely to fucking take his own life down the road because he feels like he has someone he can talk to. And I think that's so empowering and so important to be able to fall back on something like that, to have that structure set up to where it saves officers' lives, instead of just, you get into an OIS or you get into a fucking critical incident and your department's like, hey, when are you going to be back to work? When are you going to be good? Hey, your injury done? Are you feeling good? Type of thing, where you could just be taken care of,
So Scott, what is it that you think, like, you do these trainings, you speak on this, you've written, what do you think if you had to get, because I know you've addressed the international or the chiefs of police conferences, right? You've addressed different groups of law enforcement. What is the one thing you would ask them to consider, or what's the one change you would make? I said 11-month rotations, a month off for training, right?
That is
You
true.
work 11 months, you pull out for the 12th month, you put your civvies on, you go back to a mini academy for 30 days. They spend time debriefing stuff, they spend time doing mental wellness stuff, and they spend time training you on all the in-service stuff that you really need, letting you fight, letting you smoke and joke a little bit, a more like an A school rather than an academy,
Like
right?
a decompression, but tactical decompression.
But tactical decompression, right? It's done with a purpose. You have some
Yeah.
breakout discussion sessions. You have some training sessions. You 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for a month, and then you go back to patrol for 11 months, right? Like that's my theory.
I'm all about
But
it.
getting departments to do that's a little bit different. So if you could get the chiefs to make a change, what would you have them do?
Oh, I tell them I come to you as a friend and I'm saying the quiet parts out loud and I'm having tough conversations like any friend would. But when I
100%.
get to the hard topics of alcoholism, suicide risk, and other things, I tell them what's one of the crucial topics we are trained to do when it comes to responding to someone in crisis: active listening. And police officers, if they've been to CIT, which obviously many have, they will listen to someone who's in crisis and they'll respond without asking any questions. Obviously, try to get as much as they can from the dispatchers for safety reasons, but they will they will listen to the person in crisis. And if time's on their side, then they will listen to that person. So I ask them, I say, but are we listening to our own? I mean, seriously, are we listening to our own? So if an officer does come out and say, I'm really bothered, I don't know what to do they feel like they're going to be listened to, or do they feel like the policy manual is going to be thrown at them? And I have said that at chiefs meetings. I have said it to beat officers because it's all the ranks. We just have to form this culture where it's like there will be some active listening and you will be supported. I know there has to be steps in place and policies. I get that. Even there has to be a policy even with peer support units, but like,
Yeah, for
let's
sure.
listen to each other. We've got to be there for each other. And I know I'm former, I say we, but I'm still working with law enforcement. And whenever I bring up that part about active listening and I, kind of really have that hard conversation with them, I do get a lot of looks, but afterwards people are like, hey, I'm glad you're talking about the tough topics like that and bringing that kind of stuff up.
It's like PTSD in the Marine Corps or the military. I like always go back to the Marine Corps because I'm a Marine, but whatever. Military in general. When that started pumping out, and it was after you got out, they started making the PTSD shit, like the suicide awareness stuff in 2000. I want to say around 2008, because I got to my unit in Courthouse Bay in Camp Lejeune in 2007. No, 2008, because I graduated boot camp in 2007 in December.
Okay.
Get to Courthouse Bay 2008. Around 2008, 2009, that's when they really started having a lot of like death by PowerPoint on, hey, this is what you need to recognize for post-traumatic stress. This is what you have to, they started off with suicide awareness. And then it went to when I got out around 2010, PTSD. And so it's kind of like that infancy. And that wasn't the infancy of that. Like that was well within, like we're deep into guys having PTSD from fucking World War I, World War II, Vietnam, shit like that, and it still hadn't been scratched. So now we're getting into all this other stuff. So it's kind of like at that infancy of what we were seeing then and around 2008 and 2009 with this stuff. Do you think that we can get this on a bigger scale to get agencies to actually realize, hey, we need to make sure our officers are good for the longevity of law enforcement?
Yes, I think we can. I think there is a shift. I've traveled. I've been blessed to travel the whole country, and I see high-ranking officers very receptive, and they're paying attention to what I'm saying. They're paying attention to the actual the actual mental health professionals that I've seen speak on this stuff, who are culturally competent, and they're receptive. But it's just it has to be one of these things where it's second nature for the individual all the way up to the organization, where it's not rare to speak about it, or it's not something that rarely comes up. It's
not taboo.
It's not taboo, and it's not something we do reacting to something. It's something we just do. And it is the way it is. And I went to a police department in California where the chief was all about officer wellness, and I've been to a few others, but I remember in this one, he already had a therapy dog for the department. He had a Zen room for the officers where they could
No
walk
shit.
in, a recliner that would massage the officers, one of those reclining massagers or whatever.
What?
What agency is this? Can you talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I put it on the internet, so why not? Pinole, California. It was Chief Neil
Never
Gang.
heard of
He
him.
invited. Yeah, yeah, they're in the Bay Area, just north of San Francisco.
Okay.
And he invited me to come speak, and he continuously had wellness training for his officer. But like I said, they already had a therapy dog. They already had that Zen room. He had a weight room down in the basement of the PD that he had converted to a weight room. I'm telling you all about it. So whenever the officers needed to take a break, no big deal. Go to the Zen room.
Whoa.
The Zen room. Don't abuse it, but use it. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Just imagine getting into an officer involved shooting or something so fucking visceral that you saw that you're just like, this fucked me to my core. Like you saw the rape of a fucking child and you just had to deal with that for the last 16 fucking hours. And then you come back and before going home, they're like, hey, why don't you go and spend a fucking hour with Fido over here?
Yeah.
Just pet him. We're going to pay for it, bro. Just fucking decompress. Have some water, pet Fido for the next
I'm gonna say
fucking
right now, I
hour
wouldn't do
and
it.
see how you feel.
I wouldn't do it.
I
I'd go
would've
home.
done that. I would have done that just fucking,
I can get more therapy at home than I can from the therapy dog at the department. But that's just me, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't have a therapy dog. I'm just saying for me, you need a multidisciplinary strategy.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's what I talk about as well. It's like the power of the human mind is incredible.
Right.
And we have to also, in a job that can chew you up and spit you out because of the inevitable stress, demands, and trauma that you face, like you're going to face it. You have to, and I talked briefly about how we're wired innately throughout human history, but officers don't know the strategies of personal development. I mean, it sounds condescending, but when I started reading about it,
makes sense.
And it was like I wasn't taught any of this stuff regarding. Well, don't necessarily focus on how you're going to overcome something. Focus on who you are and why you can. And then the how will come because of how you are built up as a person. Or the power of simply stretching, breathing, meditating. Yes, I said it, to where you can rewire your brain literally, and it can help change your thoughts, because let's face it, we're not only a reflection of our habits, but our thoughts really dictate how we go about throughout our day. I never heard
100%.
any of this stuff when I was in law enforcement. So when I talk about how in the book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker, he talks about thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to actions, which lead to results. And officers have to be keenly aware of these things. And
that's not always positive.
Correct.
That's the thing. There's an interesting, and I know we're running out of time, but there's an interesting thing that I read and I talked to somebody else about, and I'm curious to do a little bit of a deeper dive because this just came up recently. But they have found that, and this is again, don't quote me on the study. I don't know how many people they surveyed, but forcing officers who have been in critical incidents to play Tetris after the critical incident can lessen the effects of long-term PTSD.
Really?
And it, again, anecdotally, it has something to do with focusing the brain and focusing the thoughts on something else and not allowing it to spiral and rewire itself.
What you focus on is what grows.
Yes.
Right. Like breaking the chain of that fucking violent curriculum, that violent circle where you're constantly thinking, this is what just happened. This is what's going to happen to me. This is what's fucking, in breaking that cycle to where you stop focusing on it. You start thinking about something else so you can think clearly on it later.
Right. You're letting the emotions die down. You're letting all those brain chemicals settle. And while your body gets back to homeostasis biochemically, you're taking the brain and giving it something to do so it doesn't rewire itself, because it can't rewire itself while it's playing Tetris, I guess. Anyway, it's interesting. Yeah. So Scott, we want to have you back, not just to talk about that. I mean, this
nerds.
We love talking about this kind of stuff. But we want to talk about your deployments and stuff too. We want to talk about more of your stories from police work. So would you come back for us? Would you be willing to come and chat with us again?
Thank you so much for asking. Of course, I'll come back. This has been great. So I look forward to round 2.
We just, I'm doing another police podcast, and he sent me a script with questions and all that kind of stuff, and I appreciate it. It's great, but we just we free ball it, man. We sit down
off the cuff.
We go, because that to me, we want our people to feel like they're hanging out with their cop buddies, their veteran friends, their firefighter homies.
It's raw.
It's just raw. So we appreciate you coming on with no script and playing without a net. I know that can be scary for people, because you never know what alleyway the conversation is going to go down, and all of a sudden you're lying in a corner in a blubbery mess triggered by events. But we also like to give our guests a chance to dedicate their episode to maybe a fallen brother or sister, someone they know who has passed, and firefighter, police officer, military, whoever you would like to dedicate your episode to. We're here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd like to dedicate this episode to former Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer Mia Goodwin. I did not know her personally at all. However, the reason why, whenever you asked Chuck for me to, if I had someone I would like to dedicate the episode to, I will never forget being in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, watching her funeral procession, all the police cars and all the people that showed up to support. And as the lead of the procession came through, her 4-month-old baby was in the car, and I saw her baby being held by a family member, and that hit me hard.
That would destroy me.
Yeah,
that would destroy me.
So I just wanted to read this. I just wanted to read this briefly about her. Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer Mia Goodwin was killed in the line of duty on December 22nd, 2021, just days after returning to work following maternity leave. While at the scene of a crash to relieve other officers on Interstate 85, a tractor trailer and semi-truck with a trailer collided, crashing into her patrol car and killing her. Goodwin attended High Point University, where she met her future husband, Brenton, who is a Charlotte firefighter. There are 3 children, all young, and Goodwin joined the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department in 2015. So rest in peace.
Rest easy, sister. We've got it from here. That would destroy me too. I can't even.
That's so rough.
I did know 2 people who from CMPD who knew her, and they said that they lost a great one that night. Like, I heard nothing but good things about her. So anyway, so when you asked, she came to mind because of that funeral procession that was forever impacting on me and the many others who saw it.
Well, it sounds like she served the hornet's nest bravely and effectively.
Yeah,
so
yeah, definitely.
Easy. Well, again, Scott, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. And Chuck, what do you have for us?
Well, I want to say thank you so much, Scott, for coming on. I mean, this was amazing. I love your take on the mental outlook on officers, on life, and things like that. I think that's something that we align on, and I think it's very powerful. And I would love to have you back on. I know Tom wants to have you back on, so let's make that happen. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for everybody today for
Dylan,
tuning in.
Go ahead and get that taken care of. Dylan's listening. Our producer's listening, so we could just tell him.
Okay.
I hope he was listening earlier.
I look forward to Dylan's message on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you all today for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you already follow us, please, we really appreciate it if you could share our post and help spread the word. You can also check us out and link in our bio on both platforms to find all of our social media, our media links, our website. Our podcast is available on all major streaming platforms as well as YouTube. If you'd like to support us, please head over to our website at www.warstoriesofficial.com and grab some gear. Do you have a story to tell? Do you know someone who does? We're always looking for law enforcement, corrections officers, dispatchers, firefighters, medics, and veterans, but also those ER doctors and ER nurses. We know you guys have some crazy stories. Shoving IOs in, catheters. It's all good stuff. We want to hear it.
So if you're interested, and I follow some people that are working in some of the
bro, it's just wild.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I saw one where the guy or the person went to their MRI with a butt plug in. And
you're derailing my thing. You're talking about butt plugs.
said 100% silicone, dude.
It's good.
Turns out the core of the butt plug was not silicone.
It was metal, dude. It got ripped out of her
Metal.
booty hole.
It-
Holy
it
shit! So if you
almost- it gets sucked right through the chest cavity, dude. It was
So if you like those stories, please be sure to email us at booking.warstories@gmail.com. Again, that is booking.warstories@gmail.com. Send me those stories. We can get you booked. Dylan is working tirelessly on this. Let's give him some love. Let's give me some love. Send us some stuff at booking.warstories@gmail.com and our LinkedIn. We'll get that link for you as soon as possible. Dylan, work on it. Man, this got derailed by butt plugs real hard. If you know someone who would be a great fit, please send them our way to booking.warstories@gmail.com. The rest of that stuff's out the window. I can't find my space. Thank you again for all the support. Stay safe. Remember to click the link in the bio, hit the notification bar, hit the subscribe bar, hit the fucking whatever funny mumbo jumbo for YouTube. Thanks for the support. Stay safe.
And by the way, in case you're wondering, Butt Plug MRI is playing Coachella on the side stage.
Get out of here. That's in their stomach. That's in their stomach. That's not even in their butt. That's their stomach.
Because it got sucked up into their chest cavity. Almost killed him, dude.
Oh
Yeah,
my
wow.
God, dude.
Yeah. So we want those
wow.
stories. We want those stories. Never wear a butt plug to your MRI appointment. Anyway.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah. And on that note, until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.